Reppin' Philly ain't a choice, it's a way of life. PhillyGoat.com is your one-stop shop for Philly pride. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off. Look fresh, stay Philly, Philly Goat. Go Birds. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for July 16th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the podcast. Happy Hump Day to everyone out there. And the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, I felt delivered. The National League did win, technically 7-6. It was tied 6-6 after 9. They went into a little mini home run derby swing-off to choose the winner. And your designated hitter, Kyle Schwarber, went 3 for 3 in the home run swing-off to lead the National League to victory, winning the MVP, second Philly ever to win MVP. He did go 0 for 2 in his 2 regular at-bats with a walk, but Kyle Schwarber takes home the MVP, first time since 1964 when Johnny Callison did it that a Philly won the MVP. And again, I really liked it. To me, the MLB All-Star Game was always the most pure of all of the All-Star games. It's a little bit different now because of interleague play, because of how you can get an MLB package and watch Ohtani, Cal Raleigh, the guys on the West Coast. But it's always good to see everybody come together. And I felt like this one had a little bit of everything. It had some good offensive moments, had some good pitching moments, great defensive plays, and to me, it's what you expected at the All-Star Game. Probably the most important thing, though, they went back to having the players wear their own uniforms. I don't know what it is. It's just something that just changes it. And I like the fact that they had them wear the All-Star, quote-unquote, jerseys for the Home Run Derby. They can still make their money, but big fan of the players wearing their own jerseys. But it was a fun All-Star Game. Like I said, a little bit of everything. The fact they wore their own jerseys. Kyle Schwarber takes home the MVP. And now we look ahead to the second half of the season. But again, what a great... let me know your thoughts on it, because I know All-Star Games, specifically the Pro Bowl, which was never really a fun sort of thing to watch. It was just kind of like, whatever, it's after the Super Bowl. The NBA All-Star Game sort of has morphed into a glorified pickup game at the Y, but something about the Major League Baseball All-Star Game just always hits home, and I like. But let me know your thoughts on it, because like I said, I felt it had a little bit of everything. I'm a big fan of the swing-off. I don't know if I would do it for regular season games, but at the same time, it's really not much different than a shootout in hockey or, I like the swing off better than the stupid ghost runner that they do now in extra innings. So either go back to just playing extra innings, or I wouldn't mind seeing that. I don't think you can decide a playoff game or a World Series game with a swing off, but how cool would that be? I mean, the World Cup, you can win the World Cup by winning a shootout, I think. Maybe I'm making that up. Shows my lack of soccer knowledge. But let me know your thoughts on the Back to the Future voice and text line, 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. You can always hit up the Discord channel. First link in the description. But I like the way it played out. Kyle Schwarber, maybe there were other deserving players to win MVP, but the fact he had 3 swings, hit 3 home runs in the swing-off, Kyle Schwarber is your MVP, joining Johnny Callison as the only Phillies to win the All-Star Game MVP. Union back in action tonight at Subaru Park. They take on Montreal. It's a good spot for them to sort of get right, extend their lead in the standings. Montreal is currently in last place in the MLS standings, or table as they call it. So hopefully the Union are able to kind of keep their momentum rolling after that big win against New York the other day. I do have some Eagles kind of news and notes as we're about a week away from training camp opening. This team is going to be ready. And the two things I can point to is Lane Johnson, who's been in the league for how many years now? 12 years maybe. Posted a video yesterday. Dude's carrying around. So if you've ever been to the gym, the squat racks. Most people stand in the squat racks and squat with the barbell. Lane Johnson loaded up the weights on the squat rack and basically was carrying the squat rack and walking, I don't know how many yards or whatever. Lane's ready. Dude is a beast. And if you haven't, look it up. I believe it was on his social media, and I did see it on the Eagles Twitter account as well. But you know you're a bad dude when you're literally squatting the squat rack and just walking with it. It's like, I'll just take it out here. So Lane is focused. And Jalen, I saw this and it slipped out of my mind. Jalen's currently in Greece right now, or was in Greece, with Michael Jordan. And if there is one person that you want your Super Bowl MVP quarterback to be hanging out with, it's Michael Jordan. Because the fact that all of these rankings and lists and everything are coming out and basically disrespecting Jalen, if you saw Michael Jordan's The Last Dance, or the Bulls' Last Dance on ESPN, I can see Jalen just over there talking to him, and I took that personally. I look for Jalen to come out and have an MVP type season. I don't want to get too much into, because I'm still kind of working through my Eagles predictions and everything for next year, but the guy you want him hanging out with is Michael Jordan. So we'll just kind of leave it there. But on vacation with Michael Jordan, yes, please. Lane Johnson squatting a 700-pound squat rack, yes, please. So their focus. The other story was, and I didn't cover this when he said it because it wasn't a current Eagles player anymore, so I figured why not? It was kind of just him walking out the door, just being pissed off. But C.J. Gardner-Johnson did apologize to his former teammates for the "they'll never win another ring without me" comment. Said he said it because he was pissed off. He wanted to sort of set up in Philly. Was looking to change the narrative of his career. Said he understood why the Eagles did it. It was a business decision, this, that, and the other. I believe I read too. I didn't see the whole interview, but he did say that it wasn't due to his actions or anything like that, or a rift between his teammates, but did apologize. He said it's kind of disrespectful for them. They won without me, specifically looking at like guys like Lane Johnson. So good to see that. I always like C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I wish him the best, except for if the Texans play the Eagles. All right, sticking with the Eagles, yesterday's trivia question was the anniversary of the year that the day that Mike Quick retired from the Eagles. And I asked, who did he have an NFL record 99-yard touchdown against in overtime in 1985? And that was the Atlanta Falcons down at the Vet, Jaworski to Quick. And if you watch the video, they were like on the 1 foot line. So it was kind of a little bit longer than 99.5 yards he had, but one of 13 players to have a 99-yard touchdown reception. All right, some quick housekeeping notes. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, @PhillyJimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont, and continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that other good stuff. Leave a review. All of those things. Rate the podcast. All of those things help the algorithm out. And then a quick programming note. Tomorrow and Friday, we'll be on location from Ocean City, Maryland. Again, you know how that goes sometimes with the sound. So we'll see what happens. And then kind of looking ahead to August, we'll start with our Eagles preview. Kind of like I always do, go through position for position. But I've been sitting on this idea for basically since January, and I see that WIP didn't steal it from me. I've had it in my notes since actually like November of last year. But it is the quarter century mark of the century, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. And throughout August, we're going to do the top 5 for the first 25 years of the century. Go through like top moments, top disappointments, top players, top coaches, all kinds of things for the past 25 years in Philly sports, and give you my top 5 list with some honorable mentions. So stay tuned for that. The top 5 for the first 25, along with our Eagles preview. So stay tuned for that. And then, of course, today is Wednesday. It's time for What If Wednesday, brought to you by Lotwin. And I will say, before I get into Lotwin, hopefully starting next week, I'm looking at a new online platform and hopefully spruce this thing up, get some bells and whistles. And that includes having little stingers for the different segments. But What If Wednesday, brought to you by Lotwin. Go to lotwin.com, get your 3D custom hype chains. Great for fantasy football, which, by the way, I still did not. I had a note in my phone and I completely blew past it. So if you are a commissioner of a league, get your draft set up. But these things are great for winners and losers in fantasy football, bachelor parties, kids sports, all kinds of things. Go to lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD to take 10% off of your order. And today for the What If, we're going to go, it's trade deadline season. So everybody's sitting on pins and needles on the edge of their seats, waiting to see what Dave Dombrowski does. But we're going to go back to the 2000 trade deadline. And the Phillies traded Curt Schilling to the Arizona Diamondbacks for Omar Dahl, Nelson Figueroa, Travis Lee, and Vicente Padilla, who Padilla was really the only solid piece, did make an all-star game out of that trade for the Phillies. And we all know what Curt Schilling went on to do. Won a World Series with the Diamondbacks, won 2 more with the Red Sox, the whole bloody sock and things like that. But Schilling won it out because the Phillies were in the middle of a rebuild. He was unhappy, and that was still around the same time that the Phillies were almost transitioning from that small market vibe that they had throughout the 90s into, hey, we're the 5th largest market in the country. They were building the new stadium, so there was a lot of things, or there was talks at this time. I don't think they quite were building it yet. But all of these things were kind of playing out, and Schilling's like, dude, you're wasting my prime years. I want to go and be on a contender. The issue I have with this was, and I had this with Scott Rowland when we talked about what if he stayed, with Schilling, had he been able to sort of see the forest among the trees, he would have seen that there were some good pieces, young pieces in place that he could have been the ace of this Philly staff. You had Scott Rowland, you had Jimmy Rollins, Pat Burrell, Bobby Abreu, Mike Lieberthal, guys that are basically Phillies legends already in place. And then you had in the wings Cole Hamels, Brett Myers. Obviously, a lot of those other pieces came in trades, but you had almost like a core foundation. And even back then, it was like Randy Wolf, Kevin Duckworth, guys that maybe if Schilling stayed, he could have mentored, because both Randy Wolf and Kevin Duckworth at times showed glimpses of being outstanding pitchers. But what if Curt Schilling would have given them a year or two? Would it have made a difference? You had Terry Francona, who was fired was fired after the 2000 season. Larry Bowa came in 2001, and that same team that Schilling was unhappy with won 86 games in 2001. They were 7 games back of the wild card. Could have mentored some of those young guys, especially because if you think back to that 2001 season, it was the pitching that let them down the stretch. They were able to score runs with the core group of guys they had. But if you had an old vet, and he wasn't that old at the time, but if you had Curt Schilling there to mentor those guys, maybe they wouldn't have faltered. And 7 games, you get a guy like Schilling in there, at least it would have been closer. Maybe they don't make the playoffs. But then the following year, they won 80 games, almost took a step back. But again, the same issue, inconsistent pitching. Maybe Curt Schilling stabilizes that rotation and they have a better season in 2002. But I think the 2003 to 2006 seasons is where Curt Schilling would have made a difference, because maybe Scott Rowland decides to stay with a guy like Schilling, and being able to see that there's a young core and you had guys in the wings like Chase Utley, Ryan Howard down in the minors, that the future was bright for them. 2003 was the first year with Jim Thome. They won 86 games, finished 5 games back of the wild card. Again, does Schilling push them over the edge? 2004, they won 86 games, 6 games back of the wild card. Does Schilling put them over the top? 2005 was Charlie Manuel's first year. 88 wins, 1 game back of the wild card. You're not going to tell me that Curt Schilling doesn't win you 1 extra game and you make the postseason. And then all of a sudden, 2006, that looks like a completely different season with Ryan Howard emerging as the MVP. They won 85 games again, finished 3 games back. So again, Curt Schilling being able to mentor those pitchers, guys like Cole Hamels, maybe Randy Wolf stays, maybe Randy Wolf is better, maybe Kevin Duckworth is better, and does he stay affect that? I'd have to think it does. And the fact that he was unhappy in a year that they lost 90-some games, and that's when he got traded in 2000, and then they flip it around with essentially the same team minus Curt Schilling and win 86 games. I don't know. Maybe Curt Schilling doesn't. Maybe he convinces Scott Rowland to stay, or maybe Scott Rowland sees the writing on the wall and decides to stay. You have to make a run with Schilling at one point in one of those years, and it kind of almost accelerates that whole 2007 to 2011 run. He was a big money pitcher. You saw what he did in the postseason, dating back to the 93 World Series. I think he makes a difference with this team if he stays. Now, would Curt Schilling have been a pain in the ass in the locker room? Very likely he would have been. I mean, even going back to 1993, he was sort of, him and Mitch Williams kind of went at it because of Mitch's tendency to make things interesting. But does it change this team's trajectory? Does it change the legacy of Curt Schilling? Maybe he becomes a big-time pitcher in the playoffs for the Phillies. Maybe he doesn't have that legacy. Scott Rowland maybe spends his whole career. So it's an interesting what if. What's it do to the Boston Red Sox? Do they win the World Series and end the curse without Curt Schilling? So many different ways this what if could go. But I think if Curt Schilling had just been a little bit patient, maybe, just maybe, it would have played out different. But what do you think? What about this what if Wednesday? Would it have made a difference on the Phillies, specifically their trajectory and the legacy of guys like Scott Rowland, Bobby Abreu, even Mike Lieberthal, had Curt Schilling stayed? Because you had guys like Chase Utley, Ryan Howard, Jimmy Rollins, Pat Burrell ready to come up. It's an interesting thought. So let me know your thoughts on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Hit me up on the Discord, any of my social media. But what are your thoughts on What If Wednesday, brought to you by Lotwin? What if Curt Schilling had stayed with the Phillies? This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, the ClashingConferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's ClashingConferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. All right, July 16th. We got 2 things here, one from the Sixers, one from the Phillies. First, let's go back to 2003. And on this day in 2003, I have to laugh because this is how long the Sixers have been doing this to me. One of the worst, if not the worst, free agent signings in Sixers history. Now, this was a little bit different because they didn't pick him up on the open market. They were re-signing somebody, but they signed Kenny Thomas to a 7-year, $50 million contract on this day. They had acquired Kenny Thomas the year before in a trade with the Houston Rockets. It was supposed to be the answer to play alongside Allen Iverson. However, it just didn't work out for Kenny. By 2005, he was traded to Sacramento for Chris Webber and his own ridiculous contract. But this contract with Kenny Thomas was one of the last 7-year deals in the NBA. The new CBA caps it, I believe, at 5 years or maybe even 4 with a fifth-year option. But in his little over 2 years with the Sixers, to his credit, Kenny Thomas did average career highs in points and rebounds. They weren't off the charts, but they were still career. I think it was like 12.7 rebounds a game. A solid piece, but not $50 million pieces. But like I said, it was one of the worst, if not the worst, free agent signings in Sixers history, as somehow they turned a bad contract into a worse contract by acquiring Chris Webber. And we all know how the Chris Webber experiment worked out here in Philly. All of this as a precautionary tale. Paul George, by the way, still has 3 more years left on this deal. Talking about bad contracts. So bad contracts to aging or not good free agents is not something new here in Sixers land. But on this day in 2003, they signed Kenny Thomas to a 7-year, $50 million contract. Yes, Kenny Thomas. And then fast forward 6 years to 2009, Phillies beat the Marlins 4-0. Jamie Moyer, Ryan Matson, and J.C. Romero combined for a 1-hit shutout. Raul Ibanez hit 2 home runs, had 3 RBI. Ryan Howard also hit a solo shot for his career home run number 200. He passed Ralph Kiner in the process for the fastest to 200 home runs in his 658th game. That record still stands today. Aaron Judge, I forget whether it was Judge or Soto. I should have been better with the name on that, but it was either Judge or Soto is in second place. They've also done it faster than Ralph Kiner. Ryan Howard also is the fastest player to 100 home runs and the third fastest to 300. At this point in time, we all thought Ryan Howard was going to sniff 500. Unfortunately, injuries cut his career short. Ended up with 382 for his career. But on this day in 2009, he hit career home run number 200, becoming the fastest player in Major League Baseball history to hit 200 home runs, doing it in his 658th game. All right, so we're going to have a little Ryan Howard trivia for you today. I'm going to give you 2 questions because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to go with. So 2 Ryan Howard home run trivia questions. First, which team did Ryan Howard hit the most home runs against in his career? There you go. And then the bonus second question, there are 3 teams in Major League Baseball that Ryan Howard has not hit a home run against. Who are they? Both of them are intriguing. I did not get. I had 2 of the home run or the teams before I did the research. So, which team did Ryan Howard hit the most home runs against? And then, which 3 teams in Major League Baseball has he not hit a home run against? Hit me up on the Discord channel, Back to the Future Voice and Text Line, or any of my social media. Get that answer in, and let's have some fun here on a Wednesday. Finally, today, our greatest individual season in Philly sports history tournament. Recapping yesterday's Flyers regional semifinal, Eric Lindros, the number 4 seed, pulled the upset over Mark Recchi, the number 1 seed. Eric Lindros in 94-95 won with 83% of the vote, so the 4 seed moves on. Our first number 1 seed goes down in the tournament. That Lindros 94-95 team may have been slightly underranked. But in tournaments like these, things tend to work out the way they should. All right, our first Sixers regional semifinal matchup is a Wilt Chamberlain semifinal. We have the number 2 seed in the 1961-62 Wilt Chamberlain season for the Philadelphia Warriors, taking on the number 3 seed, the 1965-66 Wilt Chamberlain season with the Sixers. With the Warriors, Wilt averaged an astounding 50 points per game, 25.7 rebounds per game, and 48.5 minutes per game. An NBA game is only 48 minutes. Wilt Chamberlain averaged more than a whole game for the season that year. Led the league in obviously all 3 of those categories, as well as field goals made, field goals attempted, free throws made, free throws attempted. He was an all-star, all-NBA selection. Was not the MVP, though. He averaged 50 points a game and was not the MVP. Shows kind of the Boston bias there, but that's a topic for another time. Sixers did lose in 7 games, or the Warriors, I should say, lost to the Celtics in 7 games in the Eastern Division Finals. Taking on the 3 seed in 65-66, it was Wilt Chamberlain's first full season with the Sixers. Won the MVP, was an All-Star, All-NBA, averaged 33.5 points per game, 24.6 rebounds, 54% field goal percentage, which led the league. Also led the league once again in minutes, field goals made, and field goals attempted. Sixers won the East Division, but lost to the Celtics in the division finals 4-1. Now it's your turn. Which Wilt Chamberlain season was better? I think this is kind of obvious. I see where this matchup is going to go. But is it Wilt Chamberlain for the Warriors in 61-62 or Wilt Chamberlain for the Sixers in 65-66? Get your votes in. Discord, social media, Back to the Future voice and text line. Any way you can, get that vote in. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, leave a review, all that other good stuff as we try to grow this thing. Don't forget, if you're going to the Jersey Shore, check out Beach Caddy. Let them take the stress out. They'll take 15% off of your move-in, move-out service, as well as beach cart rental with the promo code Jimbo. Beachcaddy.app, because vacation should not be stressful. All right, let me know your answer to the Ryan Howard trivia questions. 2 questions today on a slow Wednesday. Who has Ryan Howard hit the most home runs against in his career, and which 3 teams has he not hit any home runs against? On this day in 2009, Ryan hit his 200th career home run, becoming the fastest player to ever do that. Phillies won 4-0. Just an overall good team effort. Raul Ibanez, 2 homers, 3 RBIs, and Jamie Moore, Ryan Matson, and J.C. Romero combining on a 1-hit shutout. And then 2003, quite possibly the worst free agent signing of all time for the Sixers anyway. They signed Kenny Thomas to a 7-year, $55 million deal. 2 seasons later, he's playing in Sacramento, and we're stuck with Chris Webber. An aging Chris Webber, I might add. All right, we'll have more on whatever comes up in Philly sports. Tomorrow is going to be a slow day, because Friday probably as well, too, because there's just nothing going on. Nothing going on in Philly sports. Maybe the Sixers make a move. Maybe Dave Dombrowski's on the phone working the lines right now, a.k.a. Howie Roseman. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. But this has been This Day in Philly sports history for July 16th, 2025. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a hump day, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.